All right, so you made it through your draft. Now comes the fun part of going through and assessing your team and seeing where you stand. Perhaps some of you did a little better than me and didn't wait till round 20 to take a third baseman. Let's hope that you did. And, you just want to survey and see, make sure you have all your positions covered, basically, is the first step. Go through, make sure you've got all your, you know, hitting positions all filled, enough guys in there, and pitching positions all filled as well. I know I had a couple guys in my leagues that either just took the bare minimum of pitchers, like just enough to fill their spots, or didn't even have enough pitchers. And I know a couple guys that didn't have certain positions. Somebody I was looking at didn't have a first baseman, which is not hard to find a first baseman, but when you're starting off the season, you want to have all your players from the get-go, because you're going to run into an issue where a lot of these leagues have a waiver period when you start back the season, to where you can't pick up players off of waivers for like 2 to 3 days. So when you start the year off, you're going to have to be able to fill those positions fully without the help of the waiver wire, which is in a situation I'm at right now. I have this situation where I took Acuna to play right field for me. Mine's broken up, like I had said earlier in previous videos, that it's broken up left field, center field, right field. And right now I am without right fielder. I am sans right fielder. So I'm just riding it out with that position being empty, because I didn't pay attention in the draft. I drafted a guy that plays right field, but in the league, he's listed as utility for now because he's a rookie and hasn't established a position yet. However, you just want to assess your team, see where you're at. At this point, if you're pre-waiver wire usage, then you just kind of got to roll with what you got for a couple of days. I put in a few early waiver wire requests, hoping to catch, a right fielder or two or something like that, just to fill that spot in until either A, my right fielder pops on there as being available at right field, or B, I get another right fielder in there to ride out for Acuna. The other thing, as I was saying a moment ago, is your pitchers. Nowadays, pitchers only make it about, a good pitcher makes it about 180 innings, is about what they want to shoot for. 200, 250, the days of 300 inning pitchers are long gone. So your 1,400 inning standard league, which most of them are set up as, is going to require you to carry a decent amount of starters to get you there. Because even if you had, let's say, 8 starters, which fills all my pitching positions, even if you had 8 starters that went 180 innings, which is rare nowadays, let's say they win 180, that would put you just over 1,400 innings. That would also leave you with no saves, no holds, if that's one of the categories in your leagues, and that's not the best way to win a league. So with you having some relief pitchers in there, whether it be a middle relief guy or closers or something like that, or even the long relievers in there, if you have those guys in there, that's going to require you to carry more pitchers to reach that 1,400 inning maximum threshold. You don't want to end up at a point where you're short innings, where you get down to like the last week of the season and you're 200 innings short. That's something that I see a lot of in fantasy leagues, even in the money leagues, even in the higher money leagues. That's a lot. That's something that I see a lot. People will end up with minus 31 games at catcher at the end of the year, or they'll end up either A, really short on innings at the end of the season, or very far over. Like, there's 3 weeks left and they've already burnt through all their innings. So those are things moving forward that you have to keep an eye on. So what you're going to want to do with those pitchers is you want to carry at least 1 or 2 starters on your bench that are, just you rotate in and out. You move your pitchers the day they're not pitching, the day they're not starting, they go to your bench. You move a guy from your bench that is starting that day into the starting lineup. So you want to keep an extra 1 or 2 starters so that you make sure you get enough innings. You keep those 1 or 2 starters down there and you plug them in as you go down. When they're starting, they go in. Someone else comes down. You want to leave those relievers in there because they could throw any day, any time. It doesn't matter. And occasionally you'll get to a point where starters throw sometimes when a game goes into extra innings, or they just need to get an out and a certain pitcher is good against. Occasionally that'll happen, but those are few and far between, so don't plan on those. But as far as your relievers go, you want to keep them in every day, unless you've got a reliever on the bench, because you might have had 4 guys starting that day and you needed a reliever spot. Then you can put those starters in You just, again, have to keep an eye on those innings. Make sure you're not getting too far over your projections. The other issue that I see, and I've actually had some questions about it already in one of my leagues, is what do I do with my lineup? Should I have a full lineup in and just keep putting guys in every single day? And that's not the way. That's not the way to do it. You should have your core guys that are your best players. That these are the guys that I want to try to get 162 ball games out of if they play that many. What you don't want to do is, like, on a day that your team's off or that one of your players is off, and I mean the team themselves are off, not just your individual player. So on a day that the Pirates are off, you don't want to take, we'll just take Ke'Bryan Hayes, even though he's hurt. But so a day that the Pirates aren't playing, you don't want to move Ke'Bryan Hayes out of your lineup and put in Kevin Smith from Oakland just to fill in a third base spot. You want to keep your core guys in there as much as you can. Now, on a day that Ke'Bryan Hayes is out, but the team is still playing, those are the days you want to plug in your backup guys that you're carrying. Those are the days you want to fill in some spots, because there are very few guys nowadays that play all 162 ball games. They're going to be out because they're hurt. They're going to get days off, stuff like that. So those are the days you want to plug in your lower end players. So when you are going through it, you don't have to fill in as many. You don't, all these guys are off, these guys are playing. You don't have to do that. That actually ends up hurting your chances of winning your fantasy league. You want to stick with your core guys as much as you can and fill in with the other guys when the opportunity presents itself. So I'm going to use the example of, I did take Mike Trout at center field. I'm not going to put somebody in for Trout. Even though I have Byron Buxton, I'm not going to move Buxton in for Trout. I have Buxton in utility, but I'm not going to move him in for Trout and just be like, oh well, I'll risk one a Trout game later on down the road. I'm going to have Trout in there every day that he's playing. If his team's off, then center field's just not going to have a person playing into that day. It just is what it is. I want as many of the best ball games of Mike Trout as many of the games as I can get for him, and anybody else is going to be secondary on that. So the only reason I would put somebody in at center field is if Trout gets a day off, which is possible. I mean, he probably will get some days off, come back off of injury and stuff. But that's the only time you want to move those guys in and out. If the team's rained out, don't necessarily do it because they may play in the doubleheader. Now, a lot of the times, especially if you've got a catcher who his game is rained out and there's a doubleheader, he's most likely not going to catch both games of the doubleheader. So in that situation, you can if you really wanted to. But I feel like that's getting into a lot of intricacies that we don't need to get into on this. I'm just trying to run over the basics. So that's basically, once you get those core guys set of who you want, those are the guys you want to go with. Your pitchers, I mean, you can kind of move those guys in and out as far as starters go on the days that they're starting. So when you get down to that, you'll have one pitcher going one day and then one the next. You can move those guys around from your extra bench guys that you have down there. On the pitcher part, I say this and I do it, but I generally end up regretting it a majority of the time, is I will look at the pitchers on matchups. So like if my pitcher is let's say above average pitcher, not a stellar one, but an above average pitcher, I'll look and see who they're pitching against and move them in and out of the lineup accordingly. So you may, like tonight I did that. I have John Gray pitching for the Rangers, but he's pitching against the Blue Jays. He's an above average pitcher, especially gets a high strikeout rate, but the Blue Jays are just, I just feel like they're going to hit him pretty hard. Now I say that I do that, and I did it tonight, but a lot of the times it will come back and bite me. A lot of the times I'll look at stuff and I'll have a situation where I took Gray and I put him down on the bench because I felt like he was facing a tough lineup, and all of a sudden he throws a shutout. It's happened to me more than it seems to not happen. So I tend to overthink stuff, and that's going to be my second point, is don't overthink things. Just get your core guys, play them in and out, let the season play out the way it's going to be. Trust your drafting and your player assessment more than trust your matchup knowledge, if that makes any sense. Because a lot of the times you can overthink and you can put a player in. Like today, I was not going to put Kevin Smith in, and I went ahead and did it because I wasn't going to put him in because he was facing Nola, and I was like, he's not going to do well against Nola. Nola's a great pitcher. And at the end of the day, I just went, well, I had a couple rainouts today, which I just said not to do, but I was like, I had a couple rainouts today, and I'm just going to put him in just to see what happens because I hadn't seen his numbers. He hadn't played yet. So, and it ended up biting me, you know. So, again, don't overthink things. And I even fall into that trap. I do it all the time. I overthink stuff. I think I'm the greatest baseball mind in the world, and I am far from it. It's just, it just is what it is, and it's kind of one of those karma things. So Gray may throw a shutout tonight and have one of the best games. I don't know, but I definitely have him sitting on the bench against Toronto. Right now, you're just in the beginning of the season. You need to start keeping an eye on players coming up on the waiver wires and coming up on the hot trends and stuff like that. And just keep an eye on it, but trust that it's a very long season, and just go with the confidence of the guys that you drafted. When people start getting hurt, or if people go into extremely long slumps, that's when you want to reassess your core of your team and say, maybe I need to do this, maybe I need to do that. Or if you see you start get way behind in a category, then you start doing those assessments a little further down the road. But in the beginning of the season, you got to trust what you went with. And I've had, for example, I think it was last year, for some reason, this league that I was in, people kept dropping and picking up and dropping and picking up Austin Riley because he'd get hot. Then he'd, go cold, and then he'd get hot, and then he'd go cold. And that guy probably got dropped 15 times. And I ended up with him at the end of the year, which paid off great for me. But along the way, I mean, he just, every time I look on there he was, off the waiver, on the waiver. So it's people not being confident in the people that they took. And I'll admit that I was one of them that dropped Riley in the beginning of the season. I think I may have drafted him and dropped him at the beginning of the season, but I ended up back up with him, towards the end of the year. Which is going to lead to kind of my final tip, which is don't panic. Don't start looking at the standings and see, oh man, I'm already 8 home runs behind the first place team, or I'm already 9 steals behind the first place team, or I haven't got a win all season. Don't panic. We're a couple days into the season, or a couple weeks, or however long. Just don't panic. You built yourself a solid core. Even if you're not comfortable with your team, you just have to be able to make those moves to get the right guys in at the right time, and you'll be fine. When you get a little further down, we'll talk on that later on. But right now we're just a couple days in, so don't panic. Just stick with your team. Follow the tips that I gave you. Make sure you've got all the players that you're going to need to have. Make sure you can fill all of your positions, and just make sure when somebody gets hurt or somebody goes down, you've got someone to step in, or you can go out and find somebody to fill that spot. My little sneaky ending tip will be this. After your league gets through its waiver period, there will be a lot more new free agents that will pop up that people have dropped from people that they drafted. So you're going to want to keep an eye on that, because there may be some guy that you wanted to get in the draft and didn't get a chance to get, or he got taken before, that someone has to make a decision to fill in a spot. Like right now, I'm going to have to drop somebody to fill in that right field position. Not technically because I have a injured list spot on there, but if I want to pick up another player after that, I'm going to have to drop somebody. So you're going to want to keep an eye on that. It's like a second opportunity to draft, and that's kind of a little tip is after that first waiver period, there's going to be a lot of guys that you may have wanted in that draft available. I hope that's going to help you get through the first week or two of your fantasy league, maybe a little bit longer if you're confident with your team. And I will try to post a little more videos when I get more questions from people about where they want to see, what they want to see, and what they want to hear about. So if you have any suggestions or any ideas, go ahead and let me know. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next video.